right, yay, now we're recording. So I'll start again. So we're discussing ways to have kids collaborate in class. So what I was saying before is for my group work, I'm starting to use Jamboard. I don't know if you guys, how many people have used that before, but the activity that I would normally do in a classroom that maybe would take 30 minutes would have taken forever and ever and ever for kids today because it takes so much longer. So we were working with comparing graphs. We start with like the basic version of a graph. And when we add, subtract, or multiply numbers to the equation, it changes the shape and the position of the graph. So I'm just going to share. Now I'll share what I did. All right. I set up enough graphs for each student in my class to have one. So we just started with parent graphs. And so we use an online graphing tool called Desmos. Each student had to, I assigned them their own number for their equation, and they each jumped in and graphed on Desmos and put it in. And now we have this like art gallery of graphs to look at and make comparisons. And then at the end, I had them use Post-it notes, or they could type, any observations. So they had some time to work in groups for Google Breakout. And then they got the chance to put their information on this screen. So it was great because I didn't have to project it. I did project it on the board for the kids here, but I didn't have to present to the kids. They could just see in real time as I move things around. And if you notice over here, we had duplicates or maybe observations that weren't entirely correct. It gave us a chance to look at vocabulary and adjust how the students were looking at the graphs and describing them. And then we were able to move onward and try some practice graphs.
Becky, are the Post-it notes specific to Jamboard, or is that a separate app that the kids download?
No, that's just Jamboard. So could you guys see that all right? Because I've never just done this on the desktop. I always have my Chromebook going, but that just seemed a little overkill today. So, and then we were able to move forward from there. They could ask questions, but it was really nice being able to have them communicate. And I know sometimes if kids are really shy and they don't want to necessarily talk during the meets, having them putting the Post-it notes kind of help them participate.
How long do you typically do your breakout groups for?
Only 10 to 15 minutes. So, and I do give them a time, and then I also run Go Guardian at the same time so that I could give them like a broadcast announcement without having to hop into every group and say, oh, you have 5 minutes left. So this gives them like a 1 minute warning before I bring them back in.
Becky, is there a way to communicate that to an entire class over Go Guardian?
Communicate
like that.
Oh, yeah. You can do, if you're in Go Guardian and you go into chat, you go up to the top right corner, there's a broadcast, like a little megaphone. And if you hit that, that will send the same message to everybody.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's really good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I was typing in the Meet chat for a while, and none of the kids were getting my messages, and I thought I was so clever, and I was not. So then I realized that we needed to find another way to communicate. But also having Go Guardian, I could then, like I had a few smarty McSmart smarts that were like, I'm just going to go to Google and not make any observations. So then I could send them little messages individually without calling them out in front of the whole class.
Becky, is it like a verbal announcement, or is it like words that pop up on their screens?
It's a little message. It pops up in the middle of their screen. So that also helped because on Go Guardian, I could see who was not actually doing anything. Like if they kind of like had their avatar up. Because sometimes I tell them they can put their avatar up if they're like looking at the screen, because that just looks awkward. If they're staring at the screen, it looks like they're staring at each other. But if I put up an announcement and then 5 minutes later, they haven't clicked off the announcement, then I know they're probably not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Has anyone else tried anything to collaborate or have the kids work in class and at home together?
I've done the breakout rooms, and I like that tip you just shared, because what I've run into is I'll look on GoGuardian and I'll see like there's 3 kids in a room and they all have their mics muted and they're not in the chat. And then I'll jump into the breakout room and be like, hey guys, how's it going? And it's just, silent.
Mhm.
So, but when it does work, I've found it to be pretty good. But I'm still trying to work through like the kids who are just really, really shy and don't want to participate for whatever reason. Like getting them even to participate in a small group is challenging.
I did find the first time I did Jamboard before breakout groups dropped, I just paired them up and said, go find your names on the screen, and you can only use Post-it notes to communicate with each other on how to solve this problem. And that helped because I've never seen all my kids together, and I don't know who works well together. Like you might have kids that you see in class like, oh, I will never put those 2 together because either they won't get work done or they absolutely hate each other. But if they just had to talk with Post-it notes, it kind of helped.
Yeah, Becky, I did something similar with the Jamboard. I use the Jamboards all the time, but I broke my class up into 3 different groups. And it's not a big class, so I had about 5 students for each group. One of them was the group sitting in front of me. And then I had 2 groups in the breakout rooms, and I basically had them do a jigsaw and then they shared out as a group. And I think because I had them, take the 10 minutes to talk about their specific, whatever they were doing in that group, and then share it with the entire class, they felt like more confident and comfortable to share out their answers when it came to a whole class discussion. And they were just doing everything that they did was on that Jamboard, which I think the kids like because it's just something different from a Google Doc. So,
Can someone explain the difference between using a Jamboard versus collaborating on a Google Doc? What are the differences and the benefits to using a Jamboard?
The one thing that's nice with Jamboard is you have a set slide. So you could do the same thing on Google Slides and give everyone access. Jamboard, I think as long as they open up the Jamboard, they have access. When I post it in Classroom, I do put like, you may edit, but it doesn't change the formatting. So if you have like 5 slides versus 1 really long Google Doc, I always get nervous when they type on a Google Doc that someone might like highlight someone else's work and replace it by accident. So this just keeps the slide organized.
So it keeps your work, so the teacher work in one spot. So when the kids go in and manipulate it, it doesn't move it around like it would in a Google Doc or in a slide.
It'll still move it around. So I always, I have 3 classes that did that activity. So I made a master copy and then I made a copy for each class.
Got it.
And then, but it's like, if they move around the formatting on one slide, it's not going to affect the other slides.
Okay.
There's just like one little thing you have to kind of clean up.
So it like truly is a virtual worksheet, unlike a okay, I'm good now. Thank you. I get it in the math world, but when Haley started talking about it in the non-math world, I was like, oh wait, how does it work there? So thank you.
Yeah, and Tara, it's touch screen too. So on their Chromebook, they can, physically draw with their finger or something. So for anything like with graphs or diagrams, it's, I think, a little easier to use too.
Something that I tried this week with breakout rooms that worked pretty well was I wanted to be able to see what the kids were working on when I popped into their room to be able to give them feedback. So when I assigned the groups, I told them one of the people in your group needs to present their screen to the rest of the group so that, number one, you guys know you're all working on the same thing. And I felt like they'd be more inclined to talk things out together if they were all looking at one screen. That way, when I popped in, I could see exactly where they were. And if there were any things I needed them to tweak or wanted to give them some feedback, I could do that automatically instead of just asking, hey, how's it going? Everything okay? I could actually see what they're working on and give them direct feedback based on the student that was presenting their screen. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Does anybody know if there's a way to preset the groups and use them again, like keep the same groups? Because one of my students, we've done breakout groups a couple times, and she said being with different groups, some were good, some were not, because they were talkative, and I thought maybe the consistency of having the same people would make kids collaborate more, but I didn't know if we have that ability. Does anybody know?
I was trying to figure out that same thing yesterday, Carolyn, because I was worried that the kids were going to finish the class, and I wanted to give them time to come back to their groups the next class.
Yeah.
But I think the only way to do it would be just to make a list of each group.
And then manually do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I wasn't missing something. Thank you.
Carolyn, can you guys hear me? I've have like preset groups based on the kids' preferences, and I've had them go into breakout rooms. I've brought them back into the main room, and I've done that twice. But then after like the third time, it erases the breakout rooms that were created.
Oh.
So it works for the first, I don't know if it's just me, but for the first 2 times, it kept the groups that I created. And then the third time, it put everyone into new groups, which obviously is not helpful.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can anyone speak to when you're doing breakout groups, but you have kids actually in the classroom? I observed a teacher recently who did a fantastic job, but we were kind of going back and forth on, the kids that are in the class, should you try and pair them up, or should you try and put them into a breakout group? Because I know sometimes you have some feedback issues. I was just interested to know, what are you guys doing to combat those feedback issues if you're taking a kid who's in the class and pairing it with the kids that are at home?
Tara, I've done both. And most recently I did exactly what you're saying, where I paired a kid in class with kids at home, because I was doing test review and I had different versions of the test. So I wanted to pair them up with people who had taken the same version so they could go through it together. And it's totally fine when they're in the breakout room. And if I'm in either a different breakout room or just the general meet, there's no feedback issues. But what I had to do when I wanted to jump into their breakout room and like talk to the 3 or 4 of them is the kid in the room has to mute their mic and turn their sound off before you join.
The kid in that group?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tara, I've done it too, and having headphones really works. They kind of need headphones. And the reason I did is if it's group work, the kids I see on one day are not the same kids I see on the next day. And if they're doing group work, they may be at home or not. And so headphones definitely help with that.
I kind of agree with Danielle, what she posted in the chat. I've been just kind of keeping kids together. My 3rd period class, when I told them they could work in groups, they were so excited. In fact, I had to like stop and be like, wait, back yourselves up, because they like jumped right into like last year's group work. So I think it definitely helped them with like just being like seeing each other in a normal way. And then I also know that if you have too many kids in here, I think they tried to discourage us from doing too many kids in breakout rooms here because of the bandwidth. But I'm sure everyone else's classes are getting smaller and smaller in person. So it's definitely worthwhile trying it now.
Liz, I think, is going to ask Scott Matchett at the next time she meets up, like, how are we doing with that? Because we are at 52% of our population are distance learners now at this point. So if you take that and then you divide it in half again, how many kids could possibly be on a Google Meet at any one time in the building? We're at like 300 if you take the cohort and divide it in half. So I don't really know how much it really would contribute, honestly. So that's something to think about. But one thing to bring up, the class that I observed that was actually kind of a neat thing, that was, there were 2 kids in the class. He actually assigned each of them to a separate group that was working at home. And the person in the class almost was like the voice to the teacher. So like he basically said, when you have an issue, like you're the voice to let me know. So I don't necessarily have to pop into every single group. So like you let me know if your group has an issue, and then the kid would just raise his hand and the teacher could pop into their group. So.
Yeah, Tara, just to kind of echo what Becky was saying, I've kept my kids, and what Danielle said, I've kept all my kids in class as one group, basically, or 2 smaller groups. And I just say, like, space out, but turn your desk towards each other. And I think it does provide them like a sense of normalcy. And they just like, and I do think it allows for more genuine discussions. And then I have the kids at home in their own groups. Also because most of my students are pretty good about bringing in headphones, but some of them forget anyways. And I'm like, I don't want to count on that just in case. So
can we get kids to have headphones? Can we get the in-person kids to have, school gifted headphones of some kind?
I'll look into it.
Thanks, Tara. You're the best.
Does anyone else have any other questions or any other things that you've tried in class or anything that you'd like to try, and maybe we can help talk you through the logistics of setting it in motion?
I'm wondering how we're doing, those of you who are doing breakout rooms, assuming my Google Meet ever gives me breakout rooms. How are we doing with lag these days? I'm teaching orchestra, so my streaming in perfect time with one another is crucial for us to actually be able to work with the kids at home again.
Heidi, I think, unfortunately, because we're using the internet, that's just never gonna be instantaneous for you.
That is unfortunately what we have found so far.
Has anyone tried, so the question on the chat is, has anyone tried polls or question and answers on Google Meet? I haven't tried that yet. Is there anyone that could describe that?
So I just wrote that I've done polls, and it doesn't tell you like who voted for what. So I played with this like with my AP class the first day that it came out, and I wrote, do we like breakout groups? Yes, no, maybe. And they would just like vote for it. But then you don't really know like who, I mean, I don't really have a use for it in my room, I don't think, but I think it would work for other subjects. As far as the Q&A is just a way of organizing their questions. My kids are pretty good about just putting questions in the chat. And then they do that like carrot thing, like, yes, I agree, like I have that question too, but it's there's a way where you can the kids can like the question. So then you kind of know how many kids have that same question. So, I mean, I kind of just move too fast through classes to like look at that, like, because you have to like click the button, and I'm just trying to keep things moving. But I mean, I think they're both good. I didn't really use them again after I played with it.
And then Jose asked about the Jamboard function. So I didn't know that there was a Jamboard function. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so when you open Google Meet, there's a button now that says Open Jamboard during the Google Meet. So I wasn't sure how that worked, if it was just a Jamboard that you open that the teacher has access to, or that the entire Meet can work on together. So I think it's just something that's done in real time versus one that you open separately in Google Drive. But I was just wondering if anybody had tried it.
An icon in the upper right is trying. Oh, yeah. Okay. I see that. Okay. Oops. Did you guys want to see? Oh, let's see. Did anyone, I mean, you guys have all done breakout groups, like you've experienced it because we had that in the meeting at the beginning of the year, right? Did anyone just want to see the way it looks and like the messages you get? Okay, I'm going to put you in some groups now. So I'll call you back in like 2 minutes. Well, no, less than a minute. But I'll also do oh no, I can't do Go Guardian. I was going to send you all a message. But just so you can see what the kids see, you have to accept it to go into the breakout group. And then they also have to accept to get back in. So when you're doing breakout groups, you're going to see, if you see a kid whose circle is going next to their name, that means either they have bad internet connection, which definitely happened this week, or also they just haven't been paying attention and they're not clicking into the breakout groups. And then that's a really good time to maybe call to their attention, hey, we're doing something now. I think I had a girl fall asleep during class because I could see like the laptop was on her lap and it was kind of like rising and falling with her breathing. And I was like, Caitlin, hon, are you okay? Because she was the only one in the room with me. And all she's like, oh, okay, yeah, hold on. So that's also a good indication of whether your kids are paying attention. So just so you can see on your end, let me put you guys in some breakout groups. Oh, let's see. It's not actually letting me do that. So that's super fun. I imagine.
I wonder if it's because Heidi's computer doesn't have, like her account doesn't have that ability, and now
Oh.
It couldn't because we're recording, right?
I don't know.
Becky,
I
did
can
you be
see-
the first one in the room?
Say it again.
Were you the first one in the room this
I
morning?
don't believe I was.
Okay, because yeah, usually the person who started it should have access.
Jamie, were you first? Or was I first?
I think you were first, Jeff.
When you guys want to check and see if you
I can't do it.
I can't. Yeah, I can't do it either. It says the host can assign people.
Oh, I bet you Ed is the one that has to do it because he made the rooms.
Got it. Thank you, whoever put us in groups. So, any last questions before we conclude?
I have a question.
Yeah, Heidi.
So having never run breakout rooms yet. Okay, so we got a message that said, you know, breakout rooms are over. You can return to the main call now. But we were able to keep talking right over it.
Yes. So they have to actively press that to get back into the room.
There's no way to, I feel like back in the beginning of the year when we did PD, we got like this little clock and it was like, okay, your breakout room is ending in 60 seconds or something.
That's because that's through Zoom.
Oh, my mistake. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So that would be nice for us to be able to do, to give them a clock and then just be like, no, you're going back in. So that's why it's really, I always, oh my gosh, my chair keeps going down. Hold on. Let me jump back up to, oh, there we go. Okay. That's why it's really important to have Go Guardian on. So you can see what your kids are doing. And because I do have some kids that their internet is horrible and they freak out because they keep getting kicked out. If they get kicked out from internet and they log back in, they'll go right back into their groups. But sometimes you have to kind of figure out why their little icon spinning, and sometimes it's that they're not paying attention. They may have avatared up and then gone and made breakfast. So you want to make sure to keep on that and let them know that you're watching them. So, all right. So that was wonderful. Thank you all for all of your ideas and for all the questions that you answered. And this is recorded, so Ed will have that posted. And have a great day, guys. It was nice to see all of you.